Okay, please can we start with a brief introduction to Cyberrock, the sort of when, why formed, key personnel? Yeah, just give us a bit of background.
Sure. It's great to be here today, Phil. Thanks for that. Yeah, so Cyberrock is a cybersecurity solution designed specifically for SMEs, and I'll explain what we've done to make the product more relevant for the SME and the MSP market. We started about 2 years ago. My previous life was in the insurance technology space, and two of the insurance brokers that we were working with had cybersecurity incidents. So that really got me thinking about what happened in those businesses to make them vulnerable to attack, and what could be done to make them safer. And my background is very much in the kind of telemetry and telematics space within insurance. So I joined some dots and then came up with Cyberrock as a way of solving those sort of those issues that come from being a small business with let's say not necessarily the right set of tools in place to keep you safe. And I think the stats speak for themselves in terms of the direction that that's heading in. So yeah, the team is hugely experienced. So there's myself, the CEO, and we've got John Cretan, who's our CFO. He's ex-Goldman Sachs, responsible for their global market risk. So he looks after the financial modeling, but also our risk algorithms. And then Ravinder Singh, someone who I've worked with in previous businesses, he's our VP engineering, and we've built sophisticated tracking platforms and insurance platforms together, in that highly regulated market. So it's a good team to have to really build out the Cyberrock proposition that we have today.
Okay, in terms of this cybersecurity landscape, obviously you mentioned the sort of incidents were the sort of reason why you came to develop Cyberrock, but in terms of the landscape, it sort of continues to overshadow, I guess, organizations' IT-related activities. I guess ransomware, people are familiar with, phishing, advanced persistent threats, zero-day exploit. I mean, I could go on and on. Just I suppose, how depressing is the cybersecurity landscape? If we start there, and then we can only sort of get more positive, I guess. But
yeah. So again, looking at the stats, we all have anecdotal stories, and there's never increasing sort of presence on the mainstream news in terms of high profile attacks. But if you look at the stats, 45% of UK SMEs have reported a cyber attack in Q1 this year. And of those, 53% were started through phishing attempts. So, emails arriving, trying to trick the member of staff into giving away information or installing malware on their machines. And the other thing, of course, is that AI, again, mainstream news now, but that's being used for good. And we rely heavily on AI within the systems, but it's also being used by the threat actors to automate and increase the frequency of attacks on small businesses. The barriers are dropping because of the use of these tools. So we are trying to counter that in Cyberrock by bringing in AI and using that to analyze the information that we see within the network and the business to help provide advice on how to quickly remedy that. And one of the key differentiators for us really is that our solution can help the small business solve the minor issues like changing a default password on something that's inside, but it can also then help the MSP understand and escalate that task up to the MSP for them to more quickly and more efficiently fix that problem and remove it as an attack vector, in the future for attackers. So yes, it's getting worse for the small businesses. The attacks are increasing, and the business and the types of business that are receiving those attacks is also changing as well as the barriers come down. So yeah, it is time for a product like Cyberrock to come in and start to help to counter that through the use of the same technology.
Yeah, as you say, the AI is sort of changing the rules, and I guess maybe SMBs until recently thought they were perhaps below the radar, that it's only the sort of the big corporate enterprises that get attacked. Whether or not that's true, but as you've outlined there, they now have to take cybersecurity seriously, or if they were already doing things much more seriously. I suppose, just can you sort of re-emphasize how big is this change with AI coming along to make cybersecurity attacks more easy to develop, I guess?
Yeah, so a couple of practical examples, I suppose. The the frequencies are increasing and the automation's increasing. I think people, small business owners typically did regard themselves as under the radar, as you say, because they're perhaps too small. But many businesses are actually part of supply chains. The data they hold is extremely important, obviously, to the business themselves, but they're holding customer records, which are important to their customers. But generally speaking, there's a sort of a wider supply chain issue that makes the whole supply chain vulnerable if one of the businesses gets attacked. So our view is that any business with with either a company's house record, a public website, or that uses social media is at risk because they're essentially through those services, sites, etc., sharing information that can be used by an AI to create a highly targeted campaign, sort of phishing messages and other types of attacks on those businesses. So it's becoming really straightforward to mine that information automatically. And to give you an idea, the tools that are out there are extremely powerful. So there's a build of Linux called Kali Linux. It's used by security researchers. That's got about 600 tools that researchers or other people can use for, say, trying to test the resilience of a site. And AI has been integrated into Kali Linux now, so that all of those tools can be automated, and brute force attacks can be automated, and vulnerabilities can be found without the deep level of knowledge that perhaps previously was required. So the types of people and the audience that could try to break into a business and steal their data or commit a ransomware attack has expanded significantly. And then just finally on that point, the tools, I mean, vibe coding, for instance, was in the news this morning as a new word to be put into the dictionary. And that's where AI is used to write code. I myself use that occasionally, and I think it's safe to say that in the last 3 months using vibe coding, I've written more code in the last 3 months than I have in the last 3 years. On one day, I was able to write 4,000 lines of code that was unit tested and documented to essentially automate a particular area of domain security that we were looking at. So those same tools can be used by people who, again, they're not necessarily the deep experts, but the tools can be used to build tools to then go out and find information about the small businesses. So that's the landscape that we're operating in now. And again, in Cyberrock, what we're trying to do is bring that the automation, those capabilities to bear for the protection of the small business, but also for the automation in the MSP environment.
Yeah, I mean, and that's maybe where we can dig a little deeper. So you've got the the portfolio, the Cyberrock solutions. Can you give us just a bit more detail as to what they are, how they work, and I guess
Sure.
also as well the benefits that they will deliver to the MSP and the MSP's customers?
Yeah, sure. So the solution that we have, and again, we're positioning Cyberrock to be like the cybersecurity expert in the small business, but helping the small business and helping the MSP. It's got that dual role. The solution itself is a small box. It looks a little bit like an electricity meter. It's got a screen on it with a score out of 100, and then some status boxes. And that box gets put into the SME network, and it immediately starts to scan the devices on the network and look for vulnerabilities. So it's looking for out-of-date software, it's looking for weak or default passwords, and it's able to then report that back to our systems for generating prioritized tickets. The other thing that the box does, which I think is hugely useful for this more complex environment, is it's looking out for activity on the network that might be related to an attack in progress. So there's an actual alarm on the box. It will start to beep and attract attention if it detects an internal scan, for instance. It will then escalate that up, and then immediately the machine that caused that scan can be isolated from the network. And the idea there is that in the early stages of an attack, if someone has got into the network, we can then stop that in its tracks before it turns into a full ransomware attack. So the MSP would be alerted, and then the MSP can come in and then do their job in terms of cleaning up the equipment that might be infected. So that's the device that goes into the network. There's an app that acts as the interface for the small business, and there's a chat interface on there. We have an AI called Rocky that tells you the top 5 things that need addressing. If they're simple things, then the small business can do them themselves. And what I mean by that is that's the basic stuff, like you've left the default password on your printer. For the more sophisticated and complex tasks, that gets escalated up to the MSP. So we're kind of reducing the noise that the MSP would see and only escalating tickets that that need the MSP's attention. That said, the MSP sees everything, so they can take a view and they understand the history of what's been flagged up and what's been fixed. And then we have a portal which is the primary interface for the MSP. So the MSP can log in and they can see all of the Cyberrock devices on all of the customer deployments that they're managing, how many hosts, what issues, and the number that are critical. And that allows them to very quickly prioritize what's been seen and what needs to be done. And the score on the screen is really useful as a kind of communication tool. When a problem is resolved, the score goes up. So you create this kind of air of transparency where the business understands that they're getting really good value service from the MSP, and the MSP can see when perhaps a new device has been plugged into the network and that may have a vulnerability. And when the MSP talks to the small business, there's let's say a smooth runway in terms of coming in and saying, well, actually, we need to fix this for you. And the small business will already have seen the potential vulnerability that needs addressing. So we're kind of creating that virtuous circle. And the way we have built the portal for the MSP is that it's looking for delivering efficiencies. So the large language models that we use, the GPTs that we use, create the playbooks for fixing some of the issues. So if it's something like some additional ports that are open that shouldn't be, then our system generates the list of instructions to fix those issues that the MSP can follow if they perhaps aren't as experienced in cybersecurity that they might need that additional assistance. And we're also looking for areas that are deficits. So if we don't see a backup server, or if we don't see sort of enterprise grade firewalls, those sorts of things are reported, so the MSP can go in and help the small business tighten up those areas of security. So we're helping the MSP deliver demonstrable value back into the small business. And then finally, what we're also doing is, MSPs, of course, use, one of a handful of platforms to automate and manage their businesses. And we're in the process of integrating into those platforms, and so that we can automatically push tickets into, whether it's Halo or ConnectWise, so we can be compatible with the operating environment that the MSP is already working on. So yeah, I mean, we're very much an efficiency and upsell engine in a good sense from an MSP perspective.
Yeah, so it sounds as if there's a sort of major opportunity, both obviously because of the landscape you described, and then the solution that you've developed for the channel, I guess MSPs and MSSPs in particular, to use your technology to offer a cybersecurity, I guess, posture service to end user customers. And I guess, as I think you sort of hinted at there, that naturally leads, they can then show the customer, if you like, what's going on, and presumably then potentially upsell in other areas, bring in other cybersecurity solutions. So just, I suppose, how exciting, how big is this opportunity, do you think, for the MSPs and MSSPs?
Yeah, well, we price this to be low cost because ultimately those costs would be passed through to the SMB. We've made it compatible with the per seat model that MSPs tend to charge. So there's a significant return on investment for an MSP working with us, where they take our product, which is the physical device and the back-end services, and then bundle that with their own range of services, and then offer that out to the small businesses that they're looking after as an additional layer of automation and security that the SMB can benefit from. So we think this is it's more than just another very narrow focused cybersecurity solution. And we all know that there's lots of different tools out there. You can get antivirus, and you can get maybe an email filtering system or what have you. But Cyberrock is different in that we're helping understand the whole picture. We're helping to bring in data around where the risks are, and then we're helping the MSP to work with the small business to reduce those risks across the board, and indeed, recommend a virus solution or recommend another solution like a firewall product, if that's required. So we're very much sitting in, as a partner with the MSP, to work with them to keep the SME safe.
Okay, and in terms of the work you've done so far, how are you and have you been engaging with the MSP community to deliver the solution to the market? And sort of what else is, what are the sort of next milestones, if you like, when in terms to sort of expanding those partnerships?
Yeah, so when we broke cover at the beginning of the year, and we've run a number of pilots. The first pilot was with a large insurance broker group who also offer cyber insurance. And we think and what we're doing is sort of building in links into a wider ecosystem. So once you've got a score, a bit like a credit score, or it may be a driving score, which I mentioned earlier as part of my background. Once you've got a score, you can then use that to open up accesses to different products and services. And that's where we think a tie-in into the cyber insurance space is really important. And that's why we ran this pilot at the beginning of the year, for them to see what the score means in terms of vulnerability, and could they then power an insurance product using the data of the score coming from our device. So that was very exciting. More recently, we've started to pilot with 2 MSPs. And we are, in fact, looking for more MSP partners, particularly across different verticals. So we're very, very interested to speak to, people within your network who are interested in getting involved early. And we're listening to the MSPs, we're listening to the small businesses as well to tune the product. So we're ready to go, and we are engaging with the market now, and we're particularly interested in talking to MSPs. To go to the next stage.
Okay, and I always like to know a little bit more in terms of what's going to happen into the future, and clearly there'll be some things that for confidentiality reasons you may not be able to share. But in terms of the roadmap, further development of the solution, any sort of new products, so just anything you can share as to what else we can expect from yourself. I mean, clearly we're nearly into 2026, I guess. So yeah, in
That's
the
right.
sort of year or so.
Yeah, I think for us, integration into the MSP platforms is really important, because what we're trying to do is make it really easy for MSPs to engage with us, and take advantage of the AI technologies that we're leveraging to analyze the data and improve the security of the small business. So that's a very active part. As 53% of attacks are on small businesses are via phishing. So we have some technology in development to tighten up the speed of identifying a phishing attack, to then let's say roll that protection out across all of our customers. So the first time we see a phishing attempt in one business, they will be instantly protected. But that let's say pattern, maybe it's a particular URL for for a fake website, is then instantly shared with all of our customers to then protect them from that phishing attempt. So that feedback loop becomes seconds rather than days or weeks or months, in terms of perhaps some of the more traditional routes available to small businesses in terms of downloading block lists and things like that. So yeah, we're using automations and AI to speed up those kind of time to have remedies and blocks and fixes in place. So that's a big part of what's coming next in 2026 for us.
Okay, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, so if it's a silly question, apologies, but in terms of, so is the plan to focus still on cybersecurity, or I'm just thinking you're providing visibility, and there are obviously other sort of aspects of IT where visibility is always useful. Is that another area that you might look at, or as I say, are you going to remain in that cybersecurity sort of area?
I think there's so much happening in the cybersecurity space. We can add a lot of value in terms of understanding, that intersection between IT and the IT surface, device configuration and how that impacts risk in cybersecurity. We have a lot of work to do there. That will be our focus. But our data, all of the data goes into the MSP, and of course they have a wider remit in terms of looking after the business. And I'm sure there will be useful pieces of information from the device audit, for instance, that we gather that can help the MSP in other areas of their businesses as well. And that's absolutely fine. But yes, we've got lots of work to do to help the MSP and the small business in the cyberspace. So yes, Cyberrock will be focused in that area for the foreseeable future.
That's great. I mean, it's been brilliant to chat, and thank you so much for sharing the insights into the genesis of the company and what you've done so far. And it sounds like there's an exciting future, and clearly cybersecurity is not going anywhere soon. So you will, I'm sure, be busy into the future. So Richard, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. It's been great.